Ms. Vampire Who Lives in My Neighborhood is certainly a cathartic watch, especially as I find myself disappointed with Zombieland Saga, and my cynical predictions about Bunny Girl Senpai have come to pass in ways that I didn't see coming. It very much is one of those sit back and enjoy yourself anime without being a turn your brain off show. I think one of the best parts about it is that I'm loving it with my brain still active. For those who don't know, Ms. Vampire Who Lives in My Neighborhood is a Yuri slice-of-life comedy anime, but also with literal vampires. The premise is that Sophie, the 360-year-old vampire, has acquired a live-in high school human girl, Akari, who has a near-disturbing obsession with dolls, and wacky misadventures ensue, especially when their friends get involved. Please note that this description hardly captures the hilarity and heart of the show, and I implore you to give it a watch. In the meantime, I'll try to express why I enjoy the show. Part of it is definitely that I find Sophie personally relatable. She is pretty much what I'd be as a vampire. Gothily to dress, closed off from the world, yet also perplexed by the experiences of outsiders and kinda wanting to explore them myself. She's basically me, though far more comfortable socially than I'd be. Maybe after a few hundred years I grow out of my social anxiety. Hell, she's actually living my ideal life, only having to leave the house for things that I want to do, getting to spend my time watching anime and chilling on the internet, not having to fear wasting my time since I'll never grow too old to enjoy my life, and seemingly not having to worry about material concerns like affording my lifestyle. People aren't really even put off by the fact that she's a vampire. Her life is pretty ideal, except that she doesn't have anyone to share it with, which would probably be my biggest issue with being immortal too. Sure, she has fellow vampire Ellie, but also not really. I love how the show demonstrates the complicated nature of their relationship without really stating it out loud. On the outside, Sophie seems to be leaning hard on the Soon part of tsundere, just like many other anime girls. But if we pay attention, we find that she's not really rejecting Ellie. This is best illustrated in the difference between Ellie trying to drink her blood versus Akari's. Sophie really doesn't fight off Ellie. Until proven otherwise, we can assume that she can probably hold her own in a fight with Ellie, and yet she hardly tries. But when it comes to Akari's blood, Sophie says what she knows will absolutely discourage Ellie. It's clear that this is a hard limit, like touching her figures, whereas it's not preferable, but not the worst for Sophie's blood to be drank. Sophie doesn't truly mind Ellie. There are things about her personality that make her hard to be around, but we get the sense that if Sophie really didn't want her around, she wouldn't put up with her. She will go out of her way to do nice things for her longtime friend, like purchasing makeup or modern appliances. Sophie was afraid Ellie's absence meant that she was dead. Sure, she gave a cold welcome upon their reunion, but what could you expect when suddenly after a century of no contact, your supposed friend just turns up at your door as if nothing happened? There are hurt feelings behind Sophie's actions and refusal to call Ellie more than an acquaintance. She says as much in the one bit of direct dialogue on the subject. Ellie's whimsical nature keeps Sophie wondering when she'll just up and leave again, to the point where she immediately accepts Ellie's departure upon not immediately finding her in the house. As cold as Sophie can be, she honestly wants Ellie around, to catch up on the century past, to teach her about the modern world, and probably to have someone around who knows what she's going through. Akari is quite understanding and accommodating, but at the end of the day, she's still a human, unable to fully understand what it's like to be a vampire. A vampire who has lived long enough to see countries form and dissipate. A vampire so disconnected from the world that she struggles to know the separation from anime and real life. A vampire who is ultimately lonely, and will have to face the fact that the human she holds dear will one day grow old and die. Sometimes it's nice to have someone who gets where you're coming from without having to explain. This show actually does a great job so far at exploring its characters and their relationships through innocent and grand moments. My favorite is probably Sophie's shock at hearing Akari has more than one friend, suggesting that it's likely something she's never experienced herself. I also need to give props to a reaction that is easy to miss. When Akari walks in on Ellie taking a literal bloodbath, she rightfully freaks out. Ellie seems to take Akari's reaction as being in response to the blood itself or the goriness of the scene, but then Akari sighs with relief after finding out the blood was from the bottled supply in the fridge. Not because she was afraid that Ellie had hurt someone, but because she was concerned Ellie herself had been injured. And we know Ellie didn't expect this concern for her well-being from a human by the simple, "huh?" she gives in response to Akari stating the reason for her panic. It's such a short instance filled with so much to read into. But if I'm looking for something a bit meatier, I would turn to Ellie and Hinata's fight in episode 5. Yeah, they do the anime thing where a girl gets her chest groped, but the reasons and situation behind it is what makes this moment not as gross as other instances of this trope. Hinata, Akari's friend, didn't mean to hurt Ellie's feelings by treating her like a child. You actually can't blame her for thinking that she was younger than Sophie. We humans estimate a person's age and how to address them based on how they look. This is a faulty method as many appear older or younger than they are, but Ellie's case is more extreme. Hinata's not used to interacting with vampires, so a lot of adjustments in thinking must be made, like not assessing one's age by looks. Ellie really does look much younger than Sophie, but this hits on a sore spot for Ellie, and unfortunately, Hinata only salted the wound with her ignorance. As Ellie later explains, when she was human, she looked forward to growing up, to being as beautiful and womanly as her mother. But she'll never get that. Even worse, she's stuck in an eternal prepubescent state. And as stated earlier, humans will assume that her appearance reflects who she is. They see her as a child, even in comparison to Sophie, who is about 100 years younger. And so when Hinata treated her as a kid, Ellie lashed out. Yes, this was an extreme reaction on Ellie's part, but it makes sense. Hinata has the body Ellie longs for but will never grow into. Not just being dissatisfied with her breast size, but resenting the fact that she can't even develop a proper chest. And here this human has the nerve to call her a child and flaunt her womanly form as if to wound Ellie. Of course Ellie would refuse to apologize after such an insult. I do like how they touch on the fact that Hinata's chest is a sensitive topic for her too, as she was made fun of for her early development, and let me tell you from personal experience, suddenly being stacked while in middle school is not fun on its own. But my favorite aspect of this conflict is with Ellie and having to reflect on her behavior. Hinata was right. Ellie was acting like a child, especially when she freaked out at being called a kid. Someone who was actually a mature adult mentally would have explained why being perceived as such hurts and request that this person not do it again. And this is something Ellie has to grapple with. For as much as she hates not being viewed as everyone's senior, she isn't really acting like the eldest of the group. We've seen her act childish in the previous episode and through flashbacks, which makes me wonder if she justifies this nature of hers by the fact that she looks like a kid. She appears young, so there's no social or inner pressure to act her age. No one expects it of her. She's viewed as the little sister. She's the only one who sees herself as 450, and that means that only Ellie can hold herself to the standard she wants others to expect of her. If she really wants to be treated as everyone's Oni-chan, she needs to show it even in situations like these. Swallow her pride and pain and reach out to Hinata. Talk about why what she said hurt. Try to be the one to reach a resolution. Hell, this is more mature than Hinata acts in this situation. As she's walking home, she reflects on how insensitive her words must have been to Ellie, but she doesn't turn back. Even though most of the time she's the one who acts like the parent in group scenarios, Hinata can't swallow her pride enough to openly admit fault in the fight. It needed to be Ellie who reached out first. There is so much to love in this series that I'll no doubt make another video about it in the future. Vampires, comedy, Yuri, gothic Lolita clothes, and a deep exploration of characters and their relationships. I feel like someone is purposely trying to make my perfect anime. They just need an adorable kitten character, and this would be everything I could want in a show. I just hope that the rest of the series can be as great as the past 5 episodes. I don't want to return at the end of the season to say that it's another Zombieland saga of a disappointment. Thank you very much for consuming this video. If you want to talk to me about just about anything, feel free to hit me up on Twitter. You can find me at NotAVampyre. Thank you very much again, and until next time.